Okay, and we're back in the next part of this UV mapping tutorial. So I'm almost done here, and one thing I wanted to show you if you are fairly new at this. Um, so I've got the door, I've got my three small windows in there, and I've got the roof asphalt here. The roof right now is made up out of three layers. Um, and you could go ahead and keep all three like that and just keep duplicating and duplicating. What you can also do is you can see over here that I've got my top asphalt copy here, and I can right mouse click and I can choose merge down, and that will then join that one with the one below it, the layer below it, and I'll choose merge down again. So now I only have one asphalt layer, you can see that there, and now if I go ahead and duplicate it, now I bring up the entire row. So there's good and bad in doing this. Duplicate it one last time, and there we go. And since my asphalt roof texture is seamless, it should work out all right. So the good news about doing that merge down command is that you're going to end up with less layers. And it means a cleaner toolbar over here, it means less scrolling. The problem though is that you really should wait to bring it back into Blender before you start merging down, because if there's any patches that need tweaking, if you need to rotate or scale or move any of these, I think it's better to keep them all as loose layer tiles, so to speak. Okay, so I'm going to save this one more time as a PXD file with all my layers intact. So that's my main project file. There we go. Okay, now here's the big moment, and this is me saving it again, but this time saving it as a ping. And I'm going to now put in the word final, since I think this is my final attempt. We'll see. And I'm going to go ahead and put it, yeah, I'll put it in my, I'll just put it in my main project. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Blender now, and I'm going to replace this test texture with my final texture. So I'm going to go, let's see, actually you don't have to go into edit mode. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go to the texture panel. It's a little wide. And I'm going to scroll down, and right here where it says image, I already have my test image there. And right here it says what image I have, and then I have the source right here. So right here where it says image, I'm going to click over here on the right. I'm going to click on the little folder icon to open image, and I'm going to go ahead and find my final image, and there it is. Hey, not too shabby. That's kind of cool. Definite tweaks that I want to make. So the first thing you'll notice is that my brick is super shiny. Blender makes all of its default materials super shiny. So let's deal with that. I'm going to go here to the material panel, and I've got diffuse and I've got specular. So the diffuse is basically the brightness. If I lower that, the texture is going to get a little darker overall. I want to lower the specularity. That's the shine. And since it didn't just rain, my brick building should be fairly dark. I'm going to go ahead and bring my diffuse down to about 0.7 and try that. Okay, so first things first, you kind of have to decide, is your brick texture the right scale? And yeah, I probably could make this a little smaller to make the brick texture a little smaller. That would probably be a little more realistic. I think it's okay. It's not bad. So I'm looking at the inside of the door, and you can see, actually let me go into edit mode, and I'm going to come down here in the UV image editor, and I'm going to choose to load up my final image. There we go. So for some strange reason, I guess you have to select all. You have to press A a couple times, and then you can choose the final image. Okay, so there it is there. And you'll see that my door, the brick texture is not covering it. And so that's why I'm getting these little blips right here. So I'm going to make sure I'm still in face mode by pressing Control Tab, and I'm going to select both of these faces here, these UVs, and I'm going to press G for grab, Y for the Y-axis, and I'm going to go ahead and you can actually see them happening in real time. If you look at the bottom here, if I do GY and I'm moving them on the Y-axis, they will in fact move up. Now they're actually a little too big, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to press S and Y and scale them down on the Y-axis. There we go. And now they're completely there. And I'm seeing one step I should have done. I apologize. I'm seeing a little bit of the UV unwrap. I kind of left it in there. So I'm going to fix that right now, just so if this ever happens to you, you guys can see how to fix that. So I'm going to go back to Chrome. And what I generally want to do is before you export this as your final ping, you generally want to hide your UV layer. So you can see, let's see, this is my final. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reopen up my PXD. There we go. Okay, so this is my PXD, and I'm going to scroll all the way down, and you'll see here that my UV layer is locked. And so it tells me here if I double left click it, now it's unlocked. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to unhide, or I'm going to hide the UV layer. And what that ensures is it ensures that I don't see any of these lines for the unwrapping down here. And that means that if my textures were just on the edge or something like that, I wouldn't see those lines there. Okay, so I should have done that before, but I'm doing it now. All right, so I'm going to hit save, and now I'm going to save it as my PXD. And there's that, and I'll replace it. And then I'll do one final save, and this is now as the PNG. And again, I'm gonna rename it UV Factory Final. Hit OK, and it's going to be saved as this one here. And I'm going to say replace, and there we go. Okay, I'll hop back over to Blender, and you can see this is the old one that has the little UV poking out over here. So the way I update my textures, I'm going to go to my texture panel, and if you come over here, you could do it the long way, which is to go right here where it says image, click on it, and click on the folder and find the image again. But because the new version is the same name, I can just click on this little double arrow here, and it will reload the image. And because they have the same name, you should see these little UVs just disappear once I click this. And there we go. So now Blender sees that there's a new version on my hard drive, and there we go. So the door is looking all right. Actually, the door is looking like it's upside down. Yeah, the door is looking like it's upside down. So let's fix that. Okay, so I'm going to, in my 3D window, select the door, and you can see it over here in my UV. So how do we correct this? Well, we simply press R, and I can start manually rotating it. You'll see that the texture rotates. But I'm going to press R, and I'm going to type in 180 on my numpad here, and that does it right there. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now the door is on the right-hand side, which is not typical. Typically the handle is on the left-hand side, and the hinges would be on the right-hand side. So let me go here down here to the UVs menu. It's been a long time since I've done this, but if I go down here and I choose, I believe it's mirror, and if I choose the x-axis, yep, it's basically just flipped horizontally this UV here, and now the texture's over here. So that is pretty cool and awesome. Okay, so just going around, and you basically want to check things. So for instance, this window right here, let's just check all the windows. Okay, so it should be like this. It's clearly rotated incorrectly. So now you just over here in your UV window, press R and 90 or R and -90, and you can go ahead and then press A to deselect all and see how things are shaping up. Okay, so this one looks pretty good here. I could rotate it so that the big broken window's on the bottom, but I kind of like it actually on the top, so that's working out pretty well. This one's working out all right. Let's look at the top, the roof. Roof looks okay, and you can see that because you can see that these side walls here. Remember that I had to rotate the brick texture to follow these walls, and you can see why here. So that now they're actually facing the correct direction. I think the asphalt texture, the scale is too big. If you look at it, if you were flying 10 feet above a roof like that, you might not see that level of the asphalt. It might be a much smaller texture. Okay, so that is pretty much it. I think we can call that building pretty much finished for a beginning file. What I would do now is if you're satisfied with it, now you of course could go in here and you could do some extra stuff. You could go back over here. If you wanted to do something like decals or graffiti or something like that, what you would do is you'd come here to your UV window. You would unhide the UV. You could go ahead and you could add a new layer. Drag your layer to the very top. There's probably a command that does this, but I'm already here. And I could rename this and I could call it graffiti. I think I spelled that correctly. I need 2 F's. There we go. I might be wrong on that. Okay, and then what you could do is you would basically, to figure out where stuff is, you basically have to come down here and you would then want to make sure you grab your brush tool. So this brush right here, load a brush. You can also click on more and load more brushes. And then you could go ahead and you could actually draw in something that says like close or danger or zombies or whatever you want. You do it on a separate layer, so that way you're not actually drawing on these bricks. At this point, if you're pretty happy with the way it looks in Blender, you could now come in here and you could do merge layers down. And so you can merge all these bricks into one layer. That will make your layer window more convenient and easier. But if you ever decide, oh shoot, I have to go fix something and move a tile around or delete it or rotate it or whatever, it is going to be a little bit more work because you've merged them. So this is definitely the safer way about doing it. Okay, the next step is I will unwrap the other objects here. So let me go ahead and this time I'll try the little pipe here. So basically, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to give it a material. I'm going to scroll up and I'm going to give it a material and I'm going to go ahead and call this pipe matte. I'm going to take off the specularity now, that's the shine. I'm going to add a texture and I'm going to call it pipe text. Okay, and I now need to unwrap it, so I'm going to tab into edit mode and I'm just going to select all. I'm going to hit U, unwrap, Smart UV project, and I'm going to give it some island margin and hit OK. So there it is there. That's pretty good. I'm gonna try that. It's just it's a generic metal texture, so I kind of think that's actually going to work. So I'm going to leave it like that. Make sure it's all selected. I'm going to do UV menu, export UV layout. I'm going to save it to my project folder, and this is going to be called. Let's call this pipe unwrap. Okay, and there we go. And what I would do now is I would go ahead and I'm just going to make this window smaller. I'd now do File, Open Image, go find the pipe unwrap. There it is there. Rename my first layer. Go to the layer menu, open image as layer, go into my textures folder. This is where I can choose metal scratched or metal burnt. I think I'm going to choose metal burnt. And I could do this. Just rename the layer real quickly. I could do it like this. This is pretty, I'm going to change the mode. Let's see, I'm not going to have as many layers here. I'm going to change the mode to multiply so I can see it a little bit better. Hopefully you can as well. I'm going to decrease the size of the texture because it's pretty ginormous. And I'll probably end up repeating it a little bit. So yeah, we have to think about the texture. So I'll leave it something like that. So yes, and I'll just go ahead and do some duplication. So I'll put one copy there, duplicate. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and put these like this, and then I'm going to do one more up here. So literally just like that. And I'm going to pretty much call this finished so that I can go bring it over there. So that was super easy. So you want to save this as a PXD file, just again, if you ever need to come over here. So I'll call this pipe layers. Save it in my project folder. All right, now I want to bring this now into Blender. Just check it and see. So I have to remember, hide and turn off the UV layer. Okay, so now file save. I'm going to save this as a PNG, and I'm going to call this pipe. I'm going to call it final. Okay, good. Hit OK, and I'll save this in my project folder as well. Hit save, and there we go. Okay, so bring it back into Blender. I'm now going to come down here to image, say open image, show my thumbnails. There it is right there. Okay, so now I'm going to make sure that all of my UVs are selected. I'm going to come down here and choose pipe final. There it is. Okay. So here you can see that you're seeing some white, and that's because some of my textures and stuff are not working right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix that now. So I'm going to press B for box select, and I'm going to box select these islands, and simply, here we go. So you can see where some of the white is there. That's this over here. And I simply just press G and grab it and move it over. I can also press S and scale, and you can see that that's making the texture bigger. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. B to box select. Now if you can't box select, you could shift right click and select every single one of these and just keep doing that. That's kind of irritating though. So you can box select. You can also hold down the control key and control left click, and this is called lasso select. And this lets you select kind of funky irregular shapes. So again, I'm going to go ahead and move that. I'm going to lasso select this. And sometimes it's just fun to draw the lassos. Okay, I'm going to scale this down a little bit. Okay, moving on. I'm going to go ahead and scale these down a touch. Grab it, move it in. Box select, grab it, move it in. And then, of course, fix these guys here. So just box select, G for grab, box select, G for grab. Now these are kind of rotated at a funky angle here, which is, it's such a small object that you might not notice it. I'm going to go back into object mode and see if you can see. You can actually see a seam here, so it's not the best. What I can do is I'll go ahead and I'll just manually rotate these so they're kind of all facing up. I'll determine if that helps out at all. So just rotating them individually. It's my little way of making a happy textured world. Okay, there we go. And we'll see if that matters at all. Okay, so I think, let's go back into object mode, deselect, see what that looks like. Now if I want to make it darker, here's what you can do. Go back to the materials panel. I lowered the specularity, but if I want to make it really dark, I can lower the diffuse, and you can see that's just becoming a darker texture. So you have a little, it's like a little brightness slider. So I can do that. So that's kind of cool. Okay, the ladder is the exact same thing, similar. So first things first, come over here, add a material, ladder, matte, and I don't mean to be going fast here, but I'm going to lower the specularity. I'm going to add in a texture, ladder, text. I'm going to enter edit mode, press A couple times to select all, U to unwrap, Smart UV project, island margin, and there it is. Wow, it is a bunch of rectangles. And that's kind of what I expected, but I'm just going to use a generic metal texture, very much identical to what I did for the pipe. So with all of the UV islands selected, UV menu, export UV layout. I'll call this ladder unwrap. And it's a ping. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video since it's pretty much the exact same thing. And there we go. And I just now realized that my metal texture here was actually set, the layers, I was going so fast that my mode was set to multiply. So that was a mistake, and you can see the difference now. These guys, whoops. These guys over here you can actually see through, so they're semi-transparent, which isn't good. And this one's now opaque, so I do have to go back and change the mode back to normal, so sorry about that. My bad. But you can see how I fix it. Basically, I just set all 4 of them. Luckily, I only had 4. I can now go back and hit save. It's going to be the ping. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to save it in here and replace it. Again, go back to Blender. Go to the pipe. You really can't even tell, but that's the kind of thing that would bother me. I go to my texture panel. I scroll down here, and again, refresh this, and that should take care of it. So now you can see my my textures are a little brighter. They look a little better. So there we go. And maybe I'll bring the diffuse back up a little bit so it's a tiny bit brighter so you can see it stand out from the roof. Okay, so there's my UV. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video so you don't have to watch every single thing, and then I'll show you the finished result. I'm back. So I basically scaled down the metal texture because the metal texture came in and it was bigger than the whole UV map. So I scaled it down so the scratches in the metal weren't so huge. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you here. I'm just going to, I think that with textures like this, you can see some repeating definitely going on. Here's a big dark color here, and you can see it repeating. But on such a small object like the ladder, I don't think the viewer will see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to right-click and duplicate my layer, and then I'm just going to go ahead and tile it up. And then I will right-click, and I'll choose Merge Down, and that way, oops, let me undo that. And then after I merge down, I'm going to duplicate the layer, and then boom, I've got this other one here. And then I can go ahead and duplicate the layer, and you can see that I can basically fill an entire page right there very quickly. All right, so I'm going to keep it like that. I'm going to go ahead and, of course, save this as both the layered version, so I'll call this ladder, layers, put it in the project folder as a PXD, and then I think I'm okay to bring it back into Blender now. Whoops, forgot, I need to hide the UV layer. Okay, so it's going to be a ping. Instead of ladder layers, I'm going to call it final. Okay. it's a ping image, and let's bring it over. Okay, so I have my material. I'm gonna go to my texture. I have my texture. I'm gonna say open. Here it is here. We'll see how that looks. I'll load it up here. It always zooms in. I don't know why Blender does that. And here it is over here. So I'll tab back into object mode. So the texture looks pretty decent. It looks a little bright. So again, I'll go over here to material. I'll lower the diffuse so it just becomes a little darker. Okay, so that's not too shabby. I'll save. And the last thing I'm going to do is unwrap the simplest object, and that is simply the ground. So U to unwrap, Smart UV project, and there you go. You don't even need an island because that's what it is. Now I will show you how you can do a little bit more of an advanced treatment here. You could just put one texture over this, like I could put in just a brick concrete texture. I'll show you one minor little thing that's a little more intermediate to advanced, and I'll show you in the next video how we'll put in a couple different textures. So I'll put in a concrete pavement texture, and then I'll have maybe a couple patches of dead grass in here, and then maybe some patches of dirt poking through and stuff like that. And that way we get a lot more variety than just one texture. So to finish up this video, I'll simply select my, actually I'll go ahead and I'll make a material. I'll call this ground matte, and I'll give it a texture, new ground text. I don't have the texture yet, so that's it. I'm going to make sure I have the UV all selected, UV menu, export UV, and I'll call this ground unwrap. Okay, good. And I'll go ahead and save my Blender file. In the last video tutorial, which I'll probably film this weekend, I will show you that last part with Pixlr, and I will use my pen and tablet, or my stylus and tablet, to get a little bit more control. So I will see you then. Thank you so much.